Yes, everybody, and welcome back to TarHeelIllustrated.com. I'm Jacob Turner. Joining me, as he always does, is THI publisher Andrew Jones. And AJ, we're here to talk Carolina football and essentially the next steps for the North Carolina football program. Is obviously the news came out earlier on Tuesday that Mack Brown will not return next season at the helm of the North Carolina football program. I stated it in the last podcast we did. Go check that one out if you haven't seen that already, kind of talking about the timeline and how it happened and why it happened. But I stated in the last podcast that he will coach the state game. No decision been made at the time of recording this podcast. Let me make that clear on whether he will coach in the bowl game or not. But as mentioned, this podcast is going to be looking ahead a little bit in terms of what are the next steps for North Carolina, as they've obviously got a pretty big vacant position at the helm of their football program right now. So we're not going to come on here and throw candidates out and all that kind of jazz. It's a waste of time in doing so. AJ's got some very well-sourced information I'll let him talk about as well, and other reasons we're not going to come on here and do that. But AJ, the clock started ticking. Just to go over the timetable, Mack was informed Monday afternoon, early Monday evening. The decision was made public on Tuesday morning, and we are now recording this on Tuesday afternoon. So the clock started on Monday. To the public, it officially started on Tuesday. Let's talk about what's next for Carolina. So based on the people you've been talking to, based on some of the insider information you have, what can you divulge in terms of what the next steps are, whether it's over the next 24, 48 hours, or even going on the next week or so? Because you would imagine that this is something with signing day coming up soon, and obviously with the season coming to an end soon, transfer portal, all that stuff that goes into that when the season ends, you would expect this decision to be made quicker or sooner rather than later in an ideal world. Remains to be seen if that's what happens. But I think that is kind of a safe assumption to assume when you look at just all the other situations and scenarios kind of surrounding, having a head football coach to lead your program.
Bubba Cunningham operates quickly in these situations. And with the timing of it, keep in mind, signing day for football was moved up 2 weeks.
Yeah.
One of the reasons is because of how chaotic the last couple of Decembers have been, when you got signing day about anywhere in that range of the 16th to the 20th. And you've also got the portal going on and teams preparing for bowl games. A couple things have been taken off the plate of the coaches to make life a little easier. One, signing day was moved up, and I guess it's right before the portal opens. So they take care of their class and then they focus on the portal. Number two, the coaches can't get out in December and go see their recruits like they used to. Last year, man, we were following Twitter, all these kids, to see exactly where Mack and his assistants were, because Mack, they signed 26 kids. Mack went and saw every one of them at their home in person or their school. And he's trying to recruit the portal, and he's trying to get ready for a bowl game. So I bring you back to now. The timing here is you've got a small class, but you've got some very important pieces in that class you would like to keep, Bryce Baker being one of them. So you want to bring in somebody who can get in Sunday, Monday, whatever it is, have enough time to talk to Bryce Baker, show him what he wants. If it's an established head coach somewhere, he could say, look at what we've done to try to keep him signed in the class. Then you get that class taken care of, and that coach can start looking at the portal. I do not know who would be retained. I would think that while a new coach is putting together a staff, people on the current staff will be retained. They've got some people there that understand the lay of the land. I think that that's important. I suspect that you'll see multiple people currently in the program that will be retained. I think of someone like a Pat Suttis, who's the general manager. The new coach would be wise to retain him because he understands exactly what the program is dealing with at North Carolina with respect to academics, with respect to funds, with respect to the direction it needs to go with revenue sharing. They've been doing copious work regarding who they might think would be in the portal. So when the portal opens, if there was no change, this program was ready to dive in head first and go after the kids that they believe should be targeted. A lot of those decisions have already been made. Staff had a huge portal meeting this last week about retaining their own roster and about who to go after. So the new coach is going to have to catch up to that stuff quickly. And because signing day is next week, you'll lose an entire class. And it's not a huge class to begin with, but you don't want to lose an entire class if you wait a week and a half to hire somebody. So Bubba historically works super fast. I was told the expectation is he will work super fast on this, and this will be a fairly quick process. What that tells me is in his mind, he's identified a handful of people that he believes, one of whom he can get. Number two, his reaching out process began the minute he probably got off the phone with Mack yesterday. I don't know how much reaching out was done ahead of time because there is a danger in turning off a coach, that if you're going behind the back of a Hall of Fame coach looking for somebody new and the Hall of Fame coach doesn't know he's not going to be around, that will turn some people off. Mm-hmm. So I don't think Bubba operates in a manner that would turn a whole lot of people off. So his reaching out and vetting, which takes place before he ever has contact with an actual candidate, has been going on now for, we're talking probably 21 hours, 22 hours. And he is in Maui with the basketball team, so it's a weird time frame for him. But there are people in Chapel Hill. One person I talked to had been awake all night. This person was working on this stuff last night and literally had not been asleep. So the wheels are in motion big time. And I would expect someone to be hired. I'm going to say right now, my guess is it's less than a week, unless Bubba screws this up or unless suddenly it's not an appealing job. And I don't think either of those things will happen. So I think that by the time we have signing day next week, they will have a head coach. I don't know what's going to happen as far as the bowl game goes. I think in a perfect world, allowing Mack to do the bowl game and kind of finish that way and let him go win a bowl game and let him handle the team while the new coach comes in and works on the portal, because there's a lot of portal work that needs to be done.
A lot, yeah. And
learns the lay of the land. And you coach the team with a skeleton crew, at least now with all the advisors and GAs you can have. They'll have enough people to coach. I talked to Corey Gaynor, saw him in the hallway yesterday, about just, you love what you're doing. I mean, he loves it. I mean, he actually talked to me a lot, which is great because he wasn't he didn't communicate a lot when he was playing. He didn't like doing interviews with the media. So my point is that he can handle, let's say Randy Clements goes somewhere else. So they'll have people that can coach if they move ahead that way. I think it's going to be a quick process, Jacob. We do not have names right now because when I talk to my sources, there were no names yet that they had. Mm-hmm. So the search committee will probably, once they get a few names that Bubba has put into a little basket and said, okay, let's pull these out. Let's go over these. That's when the search committee will more have its responsibilities, depending on how much Bubba will rely on them. There are people in the athletic department he will 100% listen to. And one of the people I spoke to earlier today and have been texting with is one of those people. So we'll see. They had no names. But when we do get names, and I think we will get names by this evening, I'm hoping, I will have it on our board at the minimum and perhaps a front page piece, but it would be a premium piece, obviously.
$833 a month. Come on, sign up and get access to all that stuff. You got access to a massive intel drop that AJ put on the boards earlier on Tuesday. Couple hours, if that, after the Mack Brown news had broke. It's
not even a couple hours.
Maybe an hour or something like that. That's what you get. And that's the access you get and the insider info you get when you are a subscriber. $833 a month. Links in the description below. I think you summed all that up well. I think you answered all the questions that I had in terms of, the process.
You think I was long-winded?
Yeah. Again, and I think that's fine because I want to ask you this, because we talked about a little bit about this off camera. Maybe it's too early to tell. Who knows? Do you think the decision to fire Mack Brown under the circumstances, again, we talked about it in our last podcast. I think it was the right decision. I think you ultimately think it was the right decision too. We're not here to talk about that. Go listen to that podcast. Do you think the decision from a athletic, I'm not going to say athletic director, but from that, from a UNC higher up position in terms of people running that athletic department, do you think it shows a real desire to be really good at football again, or not again, to just build this football program up? Because AJ, I ask you that because we did a podcast of the JMU game talking about some of the handicaps that this football program has and all that stuff. And I know you have gotten access to financials that you've kind of put out bits and pieces of information on our message boards. If you're a premium subscriber, you've probably seen some of that intel that's been dropped from that. Because I think some people believe that he should have been fired after the end of last season. I think some people think he should have been fired after the JMU game, and I don't think that's necessarily a realistic thing that should have been done. But, you can have that opinion, whatever you want to have. But with the decision being done now, before the season even ends, so like you talked about, it makes sense that they would do it now because the earlier the better for a ton of different reasons. But do you think it shows a real desire from the athletic department saying, hey, we're not going to, this isn't good enough. We want to be better. We need to be better. And we're starting that process immediately. How do you look at that situation? Because I think you can kind of look at it from two different sides and two different perspectives pretty easily.
Well, you got to look at it. They just fired a Hall of Fame coach who came back out of retirement to try to save this place.
Mm-hmm.
All of the right intentions. I don't agree with people who say Mack came back because he's all about Mack. I cringe when I read that, hear that he was wanted to get 300 wins and he wants more money and all that stuff. No,
it's ridiculous, man.
He's not. If you think that the Browns need more money, then you don't understand the Browns. You don't know. You're not aware of Sally's success in her career.
Yeah.
He was not motivated by that at all. I think he was motivated by exactly what he said.
Came back for all the right reasons, yeah.
Exactly what he said all along. And so I think the message it sends is that if you fire a Hall of Famer, a loved guy, a guy one could argue deserves a statue, which, by the way,
North Carolina's ever had at the football. I mean, he just is. I'm
a proponent of North Carolina building statues, and they do a horrific job of promoting how good so many players have been that have come through that program. So much needs to be fixed, from pregame video to a lot of other things, to celebrating the history, to walking on the stadium and saying, he did go here. Don McCauley did go here.
You wouldn't know.
You would never know. They've had 6 number 2 draft picks, I think, in the NFL draft. And there isn't one person, or very few people in the stadium Saturday will have any idea who Ken Willard was, which is a shame. I'm talking about Mike Voigt and 47 carries with Amari, and people know who the hell I'm talking about. That's a problem. Yeah. They know who the great basketball players that time were. I understand basketball has delivered. Football hasn't entirely delivered, but it did deliver somewhat for a period.
And you can also walk in the Smith Center and just look up.
Well, of course, that's pretty good. Absolutely. And not to compare the two, but football needs to be put on a higher pedestal as far as what it's done, and that would help people understand. Hey, this isn't Indiana historically. This isn't Kansas historically. It's a much better historical program. So to answer your question, I'm going a real roundabout way to get there. It shows that you fire a Hall of Fame coach who had you in the Orange Bowl a couple years ago, had you in the ACC championship game 2 years ago, and has a winning record right now, and you still fire him. So as I talked about in the Mack firing podcast we did, they've created a new baseline for the program by doing this. Mm-hmm. Mack's baseline was Larry's last 2 years: 5 wins, 2 over FCS, 1 over a transitional FCS to FBS, and that was Old Dominion. The only 2 FBS wins in Larry's last 2 years were Narduzzi and the boys up at Pitt. That's it. So when Mack came in the foundation, There was furniture turned over and broken glass and debris on the floor, and the front steps were cracked, and you had to watch your step to come in the house, that kind of thing. It's not like that now. I think you understand the metaphor I'm using.
Absolutely.
It's not like that, the analogy. Whatever it is, I'm tired. I didn't even sleep 3 hours. 3 out of 4 last nights. It's not like that right now. The baseline was down here. You can't even see it on the screen. Now the baseline's here. Now the baseline is going to a bowl game every year. Now the baseline is having guys drafted by the NFL. They have 6 rookies in the NFL right now. What guys on the current team will be on NFL rosters next year? Omarion Hampton, Elijah Huzzie, possibly Power Eccles, Willie Lampkin. He won't get drafted, but he'll make a roster. Okay. Javari Ritzie. All right. Possibly Des Evans. If Tamon Fox makes it in the NFL, maybe Des Evans can. All right. Possibly a Kevin Hester. So there are more. Possibly a J.J. Jones.
Yeah.
Absolutely Bryson Nesbitt. Absolutely John Copenhaver. You're talking 8, 9 guys.
Yeah.
So the baseline is much higher now than it was before. So a coach is going to look at this situation and say, okay, the program isn't taking on water. It just needed a restart. As I think I said off the record or on record, it's like you're going from a blacksmith to a guy who knows how to engineer a Model T Ford. That's kind of what it's like. And I think that makes a lot of sense. That's an analogy that was given to me. It makes sense. I'm cool with running with that. And because of that, I think it's an appealing job. But part of that also has to be the commitment financially. Now, when we did a podcast the day after the JMU game about the commitment, there needed to be more commitment. A lot of that was true. I mean, all of it was true. And a lot of it was the viewpoint from the Keenan Football Center. However, the viewpoint from the athletic director's office was, wait a minute, Mack got twice what Larry got as far as cash goes. Mack got a $225,000 renovation of his office. He got a $35,000 ring table that would come up and show the kids all of his rings. Lots of bells and whistles. Mack got a lot of stuff. However, and this is where the athletic department really needs to make some hard decisions, and I believe those decisions have already been made because Bubba has been gearing toward this happening for some time. I talked to somebody in the athletic department the day we ran that podcast because they listened to it. And it was clear at that point in time that there was preparation for this happening. And you don't just prepare to get rid of a guy, you have to be prepared for your next step because your next step is far more important than the first step. Anybody can get rid of somebody, but then who are you going to get? And that's what we've been asking all along. Who are you going to get? You got to handle it the right way. So they have to be committed more financially. So they can they can say in 3 or 4 years, Joe Schmo got X amount more than Mack did. And the only way they're going to get a Joe Schmo who has a chance at contending is to give him more than Mack got. The problem is there's only so much money in the coffers. Yeah. And I think that was part of why this happened because the money was drying up. The movers and shakers and the upper ring, they weren't opening their wallets as much because they, as I was told, they don't want to throw good money after bad. As I was told, quote, they weren't, quote, getting a return on their investment. Now they need to bring in somebody they think will do that. So that means they have to invest, and they're going to invest more because they're doubling down on football. They're not kicking it to the curb. It's not a restaurant that just closes and it opens up 6 months later as a Mexican restaurant when it was a sandwich shop. It's going to be North Carolina football regardless. So the only way to make it work is to pump more cash into it. Now, they have to get creative because revenue sharing is coming. So they have to raise even more revenue. I saw where Dave Dorn yesterday was talking about naming rights for Carter Finley Stadium, and they talked to the families. That's an unfortunate reality.
Yeah.
Patches on the uniforms. Going to be a name on the Keenan Stadium. Duke's Mayo. They ought to just slap. I mean, they play in the Mayo Classic and Mayo Bowl enough. Just take the logo and slap it on Keenan Field. They can make believe they're in a bowl game every week. Just practice, just pretend that it's the opener and not the last game, because they play well in the opener there, not the last game. So, yeah, I that's the pitch, and they're going to have to cart. What is it called? A Brinks truck? They're going to have to cart a Brinks truck up to the Keto Football Center that's bigger than the one that they use for Mack.
Yeah. And again, we're not even sitting here talking about, the fact that, with Mack Brown being fired, I mean, there is a buyout that comes along with that. I mean, Mack, he does have a contract, so that costs money. Hiring a new staff costs money. And like you said, the investment needs to be more to take this thing to the next level, because there was you talked about it being doubled compared to what Fedora got. I think some of that had to be done to recruit and with the NIL and everything like that. And this is separate in a lot of the ways to NIL, because a lot of that is generated from a fan based perspective than an internal athletic department thing. But it is not free to fire a coach. There is an investment that comes along with that as well. So yes, I do think it is a statement from the athletic department because of like what you said, the bar was here when Mack took over. Now the bar is here with Mack leaving. So the next guy needs to come up here and take it to this point. It has to go up. You can't bring somebody in and it goes back down to the Fedora place where it was. That cannot happen from an athletic department standpoint. But that is not a free thing. You can't just bring somebody in and say, hey man, well, just work with what you got here. We don't have any money to give you. That requires investment and everything like that too. So I find it very interesting, because I also look at it and say, and this is the last thing I want to talk about before we head on out of here. I also look at it like this, AJ. What needs to be done from a fan perspective is people want to see Carolina competing at ACC and competing at a national level. I don't think I'm saying anything out of, that's wrong here. I think that is what Carolina fans ultimately want to see they want to see consistency in that respect. And it has to start with the ACC. We don't even need to talk about national right now, because we haven't even seen, even under Mack Brown 2.0, I know they got to an ACC title game. We haven't even seen them have a legitimate shot at winning the ACC, a league that is in a weird spot right now. And
they had it. They were in position twice before the collapses.
Yes.
So at 9-1 and at 6-0, they had a legitimate shot, but they didn't back it up.
But they didn't
in the end, they didn't. But they were at points in those seasons where they did, and that's a big part of the problem here.
Exactly.
They weren't able to follow up on it, and they collapsed both times.
Exactly. There were opportunities there, but they were not taken, and now we're having this conversation now, and it was a couple years ago, but still, you are right to say that. But I look at the task ahead, because we were talking about this off camera, AJ, and I think I may sit on the different side of the fence than you sit on, and that's fine. And maybe part of me is trying to play a little bit of devil's advocate here, because fans get excited. There's a new shiny toy coming to Chapel Hill sooner rather than later. It's going to happen with Mack Brown leaving. And fans are going to get excited again. They're going to get back on board, and they're going to believe a little bit again that, hey, this guy is going to lead us to where we need to go, and he's going to be here forever, and we're going to compete for titles, and we're going to win things, and we're going to do something that really hasn't been done at North Carolina before. I'm a little pessimistic about it, because, like I just said, Carolina, the only guy who's even got remotely close to competing at the national level and even an ACC level to an extent. I know Fedora was in the championship game, and we don't need to relive what happened at the end of that Clemson game. But the only guy that's really been able to even get close to doing it was Mack Brown in his first tenure, and we all know how that ended. The athletic department played a big reason in Mack going to Texas. You could say they fumbled that opportunity, and I think that'd be an accurate thing to say.
It is.
But now you're bringing somebody. Now you're having to essentially, I'm not going to say start over, but you are starting over with a completely new staff. There are guys that are going to leave in the portal. You are going to lose commitments. Heck, we saw Carolina lose a 2026 commit 30 minutes after the Mack Brown news. Yeah, local kid.
He goes to school 20 minutes from where I live.
Highly recruited kid. The dominoes have already started falling in that respect. So the next guy's going to have to come in and hit the portal and bring guys in and try to convince guys to come or stay in the recruiting class. It is a tough job coming in and taking over, like whoever it may be. But you're asking a guy to come in this NIL era and do something that hasn't really been done at North Carolina. And I think that's why I'm a little bit skeptical of. I think the plan and the intention from the athletic department is the right one. I think the message is Mack took us up, but he hasn't done good enough, and we expect better. And I think that's completely fine, and I think that is completely understandable, and I think most fans sit on that fence. The thing that I have, and I think what you've said is, A, who are you going to get? I'll be very interested to see who Carolina goes out and gets, because I do think it is an attractive program and an attractive job. And I think Carolina's also in a good position because as of right now, there aren't a lot of P5 vacancies out there. So Carolina will be able to maybe get some guys that maybe a couple years ago, where if there's a ton of P5 vacancies out there, they wouldn't be able to get. So I think that plays in Carolina's favor a little bit. The thing I have is with NIL, with fan buy-in, with the lack of belief in the program right now, the guy who comes in has a monumental task ahead, in my opinion, of getting this program to where fans want it and where fans look at everything else in the athletic department and say, well, basketball wins, field hockey wins, baseball competes, women's basketball competes at a certain extent. You can look at you can look at so many programs in North Carolina that has a ton of different athletic programs and say they are one of the best of the best. You can't say that about football. That's the expectation here from the fans. That's what they want. That's what they desire. That's why a lot of them wanted to run Mack Brown out of here the end of last season when they lost to NC State. Not saying you're wrong, but that's just the fact. So the task ahead is big. The athletic department messaging is correct. And the desire, I think, is there, at least from what we're hearing right now. Remains to be seen because things can change. But it costs money to fire somebody. It costs money to bring somebody in. It costs money to go get these guys in the portal that you're going to have to get because you're going to lose guys. It costs money to get recruits now. The task ahead is very, very difficult. And I think it's going to be a fascinating one to see play out because a lot of things have to go right, AJ. You got to get the right guy. You got to invest in it. You got to have the money to spend. You got to win games. It's something that just hasn't really been done at North Carolina. So I'm not going to sit here and say, yeah, Carolina's going to hire a guy and they're going to, this is the beginning of a new start and a fresh start, and Carolina's going to be winning and competing for things in a couple of years. I don't personally believe that's going to happen, but I do think the decision from the athletic department shows that is what they want, and that is the new expectation at North Carolina based on firing Mack Brown.
The reality in college football and college basketball is almost every coach at a Power 5 program gets fired.
Yeah, that's just sports for you, really. Yeah.
They're all the hot shot from the Mid-America Conference or the Sun Belt or wherever, and they move up to it's Power 4 in football, Power 5 now in basketball because Big East is Power Conference, and they get fired. Mm-hmm. Very few leave on their own. Very few. So in that sense, it doesn't usually work to satisfaction, in part because only one team could be the champion at the end. Yeah. And I think that the frustration of fan bases is going to grow even more because I think bowl games are going away. Yeah. I think the CFP will expand. Bowl games are going away. I see a future in the not too distant future where a 13th regular season game is added because you need more intel for an expanded playoff. Mm-hmm. All these arguments about the SEC right now. Well, you know what? Play another non-conference game. Yeah. See what you made of. Mm-hmm. And let's get a better gauge on conference games. So everyone will still get their 13th game, just won't be a bowl game. Mm-hmm. So I could see a lot of these things playing out down the road here in the very near future. And so most coaches end up getting fired. And I think it'll happen. It's happening quicker these days. Was it Tulsa's coach just got fired in his second season and Ryan Switzer's the interim head coach?
Yeah, Ryan Switzer was here.
By the way, I saw people out there say, hey, make Switzer the head coach.
Oh, I saw him too. And I was like,
I think Ryan's a great guy. Love covering Ryan. His dad's an awesome dude and a wonderful photographer. He ain't ready yet. Come on, let's pump the brakes there.
Yes, come on, guys.
So, yeah. I think that Carolina fans should be excited because 85% of the ones I've dealt with in the last 4 days wanted this to happen.
Oh, yeah, that's
and 65, 70% that I've dealt with in the last year have wanted this to happen. Mm-hmm. So it happened. So the guy who said, I'm not going to wear my Carolina hat again until Mack Brown is gone, put your hat on, dude. And while you're at it, reach into your wallet, pull out your credit card, send some money to the program because it is in your control now to a degree. Mm-hmm. Fans now can speak with their wallets unlike any time previously. So if you really want something and you're willing to pay for it, then you can make it happen. Now, is the university prepared to do that? I think you have to make some hard decisions right now. College football is changing.
Yeah, like crazy.
And we could see a future where where college football is separate from the rest of the sports, where there's an ACC for everything else, but maybe not football. And who knows how far down the road this is, but not everybody can keep up with the current pace. North Carolina can, and it'd be a lot easier if a particular fellow outside of Charlotte were to get involved, like Phil Knight has done for Oregon. I believe that would change things. And I know that there are a lot of people I've talked to people in Chapel Hill, very noteworthy people, about this specifically. And they say he doesn't believe in NIL. And I'm flabbergasted because MJ is the poster child of NIL. It was after college, but he's a rookie in the NBA, and McDonald's had those placemats with MJ eating French fries. I've got one of them still. It's like 1984, 1985. So he's the original poster child for NIL. And he doesn't quite believe in it just yet. I know that there are other people who would be willing to talk and maybe go into something and try to get that happening, because if he were to do that, it would change things dramatically. But you cannot wait for that to happen. You cannot rely on hoping that happens. Carolina has to make a decision. You're either going to put one foot in the water or you're going to put both feet in the water. Mm-hmm. 1 foot, you're irrelevant, and you're, as I've been told, throwing good money after bad. 2 feet, you're trying to make it happen. I believe when you fire a Hall of Fame head coach, you give him multiple chances to retire. Allow him to go out and make it look like it's his decision, and he says no, and you decide you just got to fire him. And you do it given the fact that he's been successful in this stint, just not what people expected and wanted, that you're making a statement that you're putting both feet in. So the next head coach, the candidates that they are vetting right now, they're vetting from like a third and second tier parties, know that North Carolina is willing to take another step forward with its commitment to football. It's going to cost more, and it's probably going to be a more demanding job. They're not going to get 6 years like Mack got. Mack got the 6 years because he won enough, but also he earned the right to have that long to get this done. The next guy might not get 3 years, 4 years, because I believe that North Carolina wants to situate itself to where it can be very competitive, because let's say the future of the ACC changes and North Carolina must find a home. Well, UNC has a quiet behind the scenes handshake. Hey, if it ever happens, offer to join both the Big Ten and SEC. It's the most attractive school in the ACC to both conferences.
Yeah.
So if you're going to go to either league, you're going to have to be fully committed. Vanderbilt is spending a crap load of money on its renovated football stadium. Northwestern is spending close to $1 billion on a new football stadium in the same spot where the old one was. You have to have both feet in. You have to have the full body in. You got to be in the deep end, and you got to know how to swim.
Yeah.
And North Carolina has to be that. So we're going to find out where they are financially with the commitment that they can make, and maybe how Bubba and the powers that be, the upper ring folks, how they feel about how they want the program represented moving forward. We're going to find out a lot in the next week.
Yeah,
but Jacob, I believe that they are committed. The cash flow only goes here, okay? I think the commitment ultimately, based on my conversations, is above where the cash flow is, because the belief is people in the stadium, people excited about something new. Someone's going to get hired, and they're going to have a press conference. And if they win the press conferences, the checkbooks are going to open, so to speak. And that's one of the things they're banking on. So while they think they're here, it's sort of like that movie, that show, the Shark Show, where the people go in and they pitch their business.
Oh, yeah, Shark Tank. Yeah.
Shark Tank. They give an evaluation of here. well, this is our evaluation. Even though we only have this much cash, that's why we're going to you, but our evaluation is up here. So we're looking for some help here. I think that that's what the way they see this program. And the next guy comes in where if the cash flows here, several months in, the cash flows up here to meet the needs. I think that's the way it's being viewed.
Yeah, I think it's fascinating. Again, we'll see. We'll see how it plays out. And I think the NIL is fascinating. I think the fan buy-in is going to be fascinating to watch because, AJ, we were talking on a football show last Wednesday, essentially, about having an open-ended conversation of like, what would it take for fans to buy in again? And a new coach, you bring in a new coach in, always gets buy-in initially. I think the thing that I'm maybe skeptical or interested to see play out with is because of the lack of rewarding, which we've talked about with Carolina football, because of the apathy within the program right now, when it isn't nearly as bad as it was at the end of the Fedora era, that there has to be grace. There has to be some realistic expectations with a new coach coming in, that it will take time to maybe get it. If the next guy can get it there, it will take time for it to get to the point that fans want to see it at. But how much leeway and how much time is he given from a fan perspective? Because AJ, and I'm not trying to bash the fans there. It's not what I'm trying to do. I'm just basing it on what I've seen play out with Mack Brown and what I've seen play out under Fedora to an extent and Bunning to an extent as well. That if the new guy comes in and let's say he struggles a little bit, what happens then?
It depends on the scenario.
Because NIL is so important now.
It depends on what kind of roster he's dealing with. It depends on if he's trying to reshape things and it takes a while to reshape. And just cut in real fast. I get 100% of what you're saying, and I kind of side with you a little bit. I think most of the fans are going to be, well, I'll believe it when I see it. The problem is that era is over.
Mm-hmm.
You can't wait, because if you wait and you don't participate in the process, as fans can now, it won't happen.
Yeah.
You know, Kurt Cignetti caught lightning in a bottle this year at Indiana. We don't know if it's going to sustain. It sure didn't with Sonny Dykes and TCU.
Yeah.
The two teams in the national championship last year just qualified for bowl games last week. There is no guarantee it's sustained. And those are programs in which the fans are active. Not Indiana so much. It's gotten a lot more that way. Cignetti's got a hell of a job getting people to pull out their wallets. Well, Michigan's never had a problem with money. They had 100 and some odd thousand fans a game. They could do NIL just based on their soda sales.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Carolina can't. You get 38, 40,000 people in that stadium, and you're not spending a whole lot when they're there. I mean, one of the things I was told this morning when I talked to someone from the athletic department is that they need people in the seats. They need them to pay for parking. They need to buy tickets. They need to buy merch. I'll walk by when I come in the media entrance. There's that table there where they have those signed helmets. They have a lot of Julius Pepper signed helmets. Buy one.
Mm-hmm.
Buy one.
All that plays a factor. Now it plays a factor. It didn't play a factor when Mack Brown took over in 2018. It plays a factor now. It plays a huge factor now. And I think that's what I'm trying to articulate is I'm not trying to be negative, and I'm not trying to be, super pessimistic about what is going to happen next. I think what I'm trying to illustrate to people is because of NIL, because of where the program's at now, because of the apathy viewed towards the Carolina football, not only now, but going back decades, that if the new guy comes in and struggles a little bit, because sometimes you got to take a couple steps forward before you can take those, sometimes you have to take a couple steps backwards before you can take those steps forward. What happens if those things happen? Because you can't have people not showing up to games if, Carolina goes 6-6 under a new guy next year. I don't think that would happen, but I wouldn't necessarily be surprised if it did, because just how people feel about this program right now. I think it's a fascinating thing.
Yeah, firing a coach should eliminate the apathy.
Yeah, but I don't know if it does here.
Well, then those people can't complain, because it's a different world now, man. The landscape has completely changed.
Mm-hmm. And this
we'll
is
see. I think the next few days are going to be
a little bit here, because I think people
the next few days are going to be very busy, very active. Mm-hmm. We will have everything I uncover, I will put on the board for sure.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not trying to get y'all to sign up just because of that. But look, this is a business. This is what we do. Information, it costs money to do this. So we'll have it. We'll be on top of it like we always are. Mm-hmm. And hopefully I have some names this evening and we start beginning that process, because I have an assignment for Bryant Balcom. Mm-hmm. When I get names, I want you to dig up everything you can about him. So Bryant is sitting there with his shovel right now saying, come on, AJ, give me a name. Give me a name.
I love it.
And I can't give him a name until I get a name.
I love it, man. Absolutely love it. Yeah, keep it locked.
My phone has been just going crazy. So
yeah,
we're gonna do something else, and in between, I'm gonna make a phone call. So
yeah, we're gonna do
maybe I'll have something in 10 minutes.
Yeah, who knows? We're going to do a short football show, just previewing state solely. So stay tuned for that. That'll more than likely come out on Thursday morning at some point, but we are going to just keep that separate. And again, not trying to be negative on here. I'm just trying to play devil's advocate a little bit and
understood. Really I think it's fair.
Just be realistic a little bit based on what I've seen play out.
And just to be clear, I totally get where you're coming from.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there's a huge contingent that would be that way because, well, we thought Torbush was the right guy. We bought into Bunning. We bought into Butch and he cheated. We bought into Larry and he flamed out. And we bought into Mack and it didn't work. I get that.
Yeah.
I totally get it.
Mm-hmm.
So, but it's a different era now.
Yeah, 100%. And that's.
You have more control. And people, I was told by one person who's not in the athletic department, but over there, people should just send, flood Michael Jordan with letters or postcards saying, please be our Phil Knight.
That's they need it more than ever.
That's not me saying. That's what they say. However, I will say you probably should be North Carolina's Phil Knight because you could change the entire landscape. And MJ loves all sports. Huge baseball guy. Can you imagine MJ Cash going to baseball?
God, it would just completely.
Scott Forbes will actually be able to get enough pitching where he doesn't have to use the same relief pitcher every day.
Yeah, 100%, man. I mean, it would, and maybe Carolina will get that at one point. But yeah, man, we'll continue to cover it, and it'll be a fascinating thing to cover. And I think it's going to be a very interesting thing when that coach is hired over the next couple seasons and how things work out and how fans respond to it. Because, like you said, they have more control than they ever do. But when what's the famous quote, AJ, from George Bush, the misquote? Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice. Something and then fool me 3 times, can't be fooled again or something like that.
Yeah.
That's kind of what it feels like with the Carolina fan base. And
let's gauge a reaction when this hire's made. We'll come back on here and we'll revisit this topic.
Yeah, it's gonna be awesome and fascinating to see. I've been Jacob Turner. He's been Andrew Jones. Another edition of the THI podcast. Appreciate y'all watching. Stay tuned for the UNC football show. Also go watch.
I'm about to make this phone call. As soon as you get off, I'm about to make this phone call.
Go watch our breakdown on how Mack Brown's played out as well. So
that's some hot news in a minute.
Appreciate you guys watching, and keep it locked to charliestrade.com because you might have some hot news coming up soon. We'll see y'all next time. Thanks.